Hi there, my name is Hannah Phillips and welcome to Under the Brolly Season 2. This My Umbrella podcast aims to educate and inform the wider community about the lesser known LGBTQ+ sexualities, gender identities, fetishes and kinks. My Umbrella is a volunteer-led project by Reading Pride based in Reading, Berkshire for the lesser known LGBTQ+ identities. We were launched by Reading Pride in 2015 and our aim is to educate, support and socialise. We also aim to signpost those who are in need of support and advice from other organisations to relevant services. And our website is www.myumbrella.org.uk. Today we are joined by two very special guests. Feel free to introduce yourselves.
Feel free to introduce ourselves. Wow. You know what, Hannah? in the history of the work that we've done with the trans and other pride communities, that is honestly the best intro we've ever had. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Sammy, and this is Jason.
Yeah, I'm Jason. Hi.
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 And we run the T&Coffee Trans Network, which is a network designed to support trans and gender diverse people by providing safe, alcohol-free and accessible spaces.
Thank you ever so much for sharing that. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the transgender flag and Transgender Day of Visibility. Is there anything you feel you would like to share about the trans flag?
Honestly, I
You've
think
got it tattooed.
I have it tattooed. This is possibly my favorite thing. It's the smallest one. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the camera, but look, I've got it here in my little love is love thing, which is it's cool and it's there to remind me. So I try not to get the colors muddled up as well, because sometimes I get the colors the wrong way around. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
You're better at that sort of thing than I am.
What, remembering stuff?
Remembering stuff. I'm not very good at remembering stuff.
So, what colour's at the very top of the flag?
I think it's
blue first.
It's kind of a blue
Blue's
sort
more
of colour.
important.
I don't really like to think of it as a top and a bottom. I like to kind of think of it as more sort of an outside and an inside of a spectrum. So it depends very much what perspective you look at it from, where that colour sits.
You've also got it on your flannel.
Oh, what, on this thing?
No, you're wearing a flannel.
Yes.
Oh, this is not. This is a shirt. I use a flannel to wash my face, and to be fair, it's mostly sort of oranges and pink colours, just where, you know, this has to come off of my face at the end of the day. Maybe that's what the trans flag should really look like. Maybe it should just be sort of smeared makeup.
To be fair, that was the only reason you bought that shirt. Was like, oh my god, it's trans colours.
I did literally buy the shirt saying, oh
I mean, pretty much all of my shirts are the trans flag, so,
One
you
that you're
know.
wearing's not.
I mean,
Just thought I'd point that
wait, this isn't blue and pink and white? Oh, shame.
You know what, Hannah, you're taking being colourblind to a whole new level, and I fully support this. I 100% support this. You know, it shouldn't matter what colour it is on the flag at the end
Precisely. Of the day. So transgender people come from every country around the world, from every age group, racial and ethnic background, and from every faith and community. Transgender people are your classmates, your co-workers, your neighbours, and your friends and family. With million transgender people around the world, chances are that you have met a transgender person, even if you don't know it. And talking about trans things that you may not know, there is some history in relation to the transgender flag. Do you know the story behind the transgender flag? Here are some facts about its history and creator. The transgender flag was created by a trans woman called Monica Helms in 1999, the same year that I was born. Do you feel old?
Thanks.
The trans pride flag was designed by Monica Helms, an openly transgender American woman, in August of 1999. Just, again, before I was born. Just putting that out there. It was first shown at Phoenix, Arizona LGBT Pride celebration the following year. And by that point, I was alive. And I'm still here.
I was born into the world.
Precisely. Every aspect of the design is carefully chosen to reflect trans identities. Helms described the meaning of the transgender flag as follows. The stripes at the top and the bottom are light blue, the traditional colour for baby boys. The stripes next to them are pink, the traditional colour for baby girls. The stripes in the middle is white, for those who are intersex, transitioning, or considering themselves have a neutral or undefined gender. The pattern is such that no matter which way you fly it, it is always correct. signifying us finding correctness within our lives.
I think it's important to note that the creator themselves said that there is a top and a bottom. So no matter like how much you dispute that there's a top and a bottom, like the creator herself already told you that. So you can't really argue
I
with
can't
that.
really argue with that. But the creator did also just say, I'm learning a lot today. And the creator did also say it doesn't matter which way you fly it.
Yeah, but it does matter if you get the colours the wrong way round.
I've worn
so
it
that
as
you've
a
got
belt.
the pink as the outside.
That's true.
That's still
you
wrong.
should get the colours the right way around. Yeah.
The very first flag now lives in Smithsonian. Can you say it?
The
Smithsonian.
The Smithsonian. The too many S's. But in August 2014, Helms donated the original transgender flag to the. Can you say the word, please?
We can't see the word.
Smithsonian.
Is it Smithsonian again?
Yeah, that one.
Okay, so the Smithsonian,
National
yeah.
Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. as part of a special LGBT collection. Why do you feel that Trans Visibility Day is important? And what can be done to improve trans rights?
From a trans male, trans masculine perspective, I think that quite often trans men are left out of the conversation. You only need to look at the recent stuff about Brighton and Sussex introducing more words into their midwifery to include chest feeding and birthing parent. Now, so many people kicked up a stink about that. Oh, you're erasing women. No. This is to include transmasculine and non-binary people who are having children. And you know, people immediately assume that it's got something to do with trans women. And it's like, no. This is about actual people who are having babies that don't want to be called a mother. And I think, you know, immediately the conversation, as with anything, or immediately, and I take nothing away. I know that trans women face so much more prejudice and can struggle so much more than trans men can. But I think that visibility of trans people of all types is important, because it then breeds that understanding that this isn't all just about one type of people. This is about many types of people that are facing struggles in their lives and are understanding from other people in different ways. You know, that's why I'd say, just as a starting point, I'd probably have a lot more to say on the subject, but just as a starting point, I think that's why it's important.
I suppose for me, I think visibility isn't just important. I think it's the single most important thing in the trans and gender diverse communities. I remember being, well, a lot younger than Hannah. In fact, I was, knocking around before 1999 for the record. And before 1999,
wait, that was a thing?
All right, look, you know, there was a time before you, Hannah. I can assure you.
Life existed before you were born.
Very, very dull.
No.
It's been a lot better since you came along. Don't worry about it, right? But the honest reality of it is that when I was younger, there wasn't enough out there in terms of visibility. There were a few people, you know, there were some basically famous people, I think is probably the way to put it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it's still, to a degree, a bit like that today, that some of the huge role models that we look up to, I mean, people that have done incredible things, like Laverne Cox, for instance, has just done absolutely incredible work. Jamie Clayton, actors. These people are, you know, famous, not trans famous, famous. And that is incredible, powerful visibility. But on a day-to-day basis, having real, I hate to use this word because it's a horrible word, but normal people, plebs, I think is the word I used the other day.
Plebs, that's awful.
But I know, but I'm a pleb. I'm nobody. And I think it's important that people can see. I know it sounds really silly, but I'm just a fairly dull, middle-aged woman, a mum who, you know, I have a normal job. And that visibility is really important. I think something you said in your intro was that, you know, you may or may not have met a trans person without knowing it. And I find a lot of the time that I'm perhaps the first trans person that people have knowingly met. And that,
I feel sorry for those people.
I know, I'm not doing the community.
I mean, I grew up with people saying like, wow, I've never met a trans person before. You're the first person. And it's like, okay.
Can I ask you something? I know you're supposed to be asking us stuff, but can I ask you something?
Go ahead.
Did you find that gave you an incredible opportunity? Because when people, initially ask that question or initially say, oh, I've never met a trans person before. Admittedly, you know, not all of us want to be a walking encyclopedia of gender identity, but did you ever find it gave you a bit of an opportunity to say, well, yeah, hi, I'm trans, and guess what? We're just like everybody else.
Yeah, I guess it really did for me personally. I mean, there was a lot of things about being the only trans person someone ever knew. I mean, I guess, like, everyone would, especially at college, be coming up to me like, can you be my trans best friend? And I'm like, what's the benefits of that? And they're like, we'll buy you fries. We'll buy you fries if we're friends. I'm like, okay, I'll be your trans best friend. That's fine with me. But, like, honestly, yeah, I think it did help educate a lot of people, you know, in the early 2000s, being like, hey, I'm trans, that's like a thing. And they're like, okay, wait, young people can be trans? It's not something that you can be when you're like 50 or 60? And, you know,
we're not quite that old.
Yeah, all right, chill.
Oh,
you can go off people, you know, Hannah.
Okay, 40 years old then.
Trans best friend, you know.
I was your trans best friend.
You are my trans best friend.
I feel very excluded.
But no, I honestly, I mean, I don't think you can underestimate the sheer power of visibility, because it does start the conversation. It creates awareness. That awareness drives education, and that education drives change.
I don't think it's just that either. I think visibility for other trans people that perhaps don't know they're trans. So like, I have a story from my past that when I was a child, it wasn't that I remembered it as such, that I was reminded of it when I came out from my family. And someone sort of, they apologized because when I was sort of 10 or 12 or so, around about that age, I'd kept saying that I was a boy. The response basically was, oh, if you don't shut up, I'm going to buy you a pair of Y fronts for Christmas. And as a child, you know, you want something better than a pair of Y fronts for Christmas, regardless of how much you might want a pair of Y fronts. There was no awareness of the fact that, you know, a child saying that they are a different gender to how they are perceived by their family could potentially mean that they're trans and that they need some support to be able to explore that. So that was something that no one in my immediate sort of family vicinity, that sort of thing, had any awareness of at all. No. Which, as a result, meant that was left unspoken and you know, continued for me to sort of carry on down a path that didn't lead to me being myself. Yeah. So I think visibility in terms of that being awareness for adults and for children, so that perhaps they can get that support that they need to be able to explore their gender expression as a young person, so that they don't have to then go through years and years and years of not being comfortable with who they are, because they're not being themselves and they're not being authentic. Yeah. So in terms of not just educating people that don't know about trans issues, it's educating trans people that don't know that they're trans, or family members of trans people that don't quite know that they're trans, that there is that community out there, that is that support available, so that they can get that help. I mean, Mermaids, I think, was founded in 1995. So that would have been just before I was at that age where I was saying, you know, I'm a boy. But it was so small, it was so tiny. Yeah, before Hannah was born. A number of years before Hannah was born.
Were dinosaurs still a thing?
Yeah, yes. They were. Yeah, we had them as pets.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
If I've evolved from a Transosaurus Rex.
You can tell from the teeth.
Thanks.
But anyway, the point is, it's not just for people that aren't trans to have awareness. It's for trans people to have awareness that there is support out there, and that they can find community, they can find people to get that support from.
And community is an incredible word for it, because that's something that I didn't even know there was a trans community until suddenly I found myself as part of the trans community. And that level of visibility, just having people out there that, oh my gosh, that person's a bit like I am. That person's got similar issues, or they've had similar problems, or they're in a similar place to where I am in my life. That is an amazing feeling when you felt so isolated and so alone in what can be quite a frightening period in your life, when, you know, you're struggling to identify who you are and what all this means.
Yeah.
seeing people out there that are a bit like you and getting on and doing all right, you know, they're doing okay, they're just living happy lives, then yeah, that sort of visibility is insanely important.
So on the note of International Transgender Day of Visibility, International Transgender Day of Visibility often is shortened to TDOV. It's an annual event occurring on the 31st of March dedicated to celebrating transgender people and raising awareness of discrimination faced by transgender people worldwide, as well as a celebration of their contributions to society. The day was founded by the US-based transgender activist Rachel Crandall of Michigan in 2009 as a reaction to the lack of LGBT recognition of transgender people. Citing from the frustration of the only well-known transgender-centered day was the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which mourned the murders of transgender people, but did not acknowledge the celebrate living members of the transgender community. What are your opinions on transgender rights at the moment?
First things first, and this goes without saying, that trans rights are human rights. We're not talking about special rights for a special group of people that need something more. As trans people, we don't actually require anything particularly different to anybody else. The sad truth is that at the moment, and indeed up until now as well, trans rights have just become this political hot pot. They've become this debate. I don't know about you, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, my life and my existence are not up for debate. I exist. I'm here. Look, hello. Look, I'm real. And
sometimes I wonder.
And this is impossible. Stop it. I mean, no, we shouldn't be joking around, because at the end of the day, it is an insanely serious issue. The erasure of trans rights under the guise of defending women's spaces, the sheer lack of understanding and education around the subject has become so toxic and infuriating that it's driving those very sad figures that we do hear on things like Trans Day of Remembrance. This idea of that suddenly, particularly, I hate to say it, I'm sorry to do this, but the reality is it's largely trans women that are in the firing line.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's largely trans women.
All of the people that are upset about things, it's their main focus is that, you know, trans women are this evil type of being that's going to ruin their lives, and it's like, well, no. You're just regular women doing regular women things,
and protecting from spaces. This idea at the moment that's out there that we're being vilified. It's the same thing that happened in early racism. It's the same thing that happened in the gay movement as well. That there's this huge drive to make it seem that trans people, trans women in particular, are some sort of threat to other people. And I mean, I can't speak for the entire trans world, but as so far, I don't think I've ever met anybody that actually poses any real threat to anyone. And so, yeah, what's my opinion on trans rights at the moment? Honestly, I think they just get forgotten about. I think people don't really care, because what's talked about is just eroding the human rights of people based on one really quite insignificant characteristic.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right.
It sounds about right.
Yeah. I think in terms of, I mean, if you look specifically at the UK, for example, a lot of people, in terms of trans rights, trans people in particular, in terms of rights that they want, is basic access to healthcare. And I think that's something that's been forgotten about and overlooked, and you know, there's this whole rhetoric that, you know, why should trans people have anything done on the NHS, for example. Well, you know, one, because it's not a choice, and two, because we contribute to the NHS, we are allowed to use it. And beyond that, I think, as I say, it's so often used as a reason to attack trans women. And the actual things that we need, that we want, are just to be the same to have the same rights as anyone else.
Yeah.
And to be treated the same as anyone else. If you do something bad, you're treated as someone that's done something bad that isn't trans. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just sort of, it's always broken down as to be an attack on something. But the reality is, you know, we just want to live our lives, and we just want to do the things that we want to do without any sort of extra drama just because we're trans.
And this is it. And I think a lot of the problem is that, you know, what is a human rights issue has been devolved into so many separate, seemingly political battles. And it's just not the case. I mean, you mentioned about access for healthcare, and trans rights is not about access for healthcare. Trans rights are the human right aspect of it. This is just general access to healthcare. But at the same time, there's the education issue. I can't go to a doctor. I went to a doctor with a broken rib, and they wanted to know about my trans status, as though it would have some sort of impact on the fact that I'd broken a rib. This is the sort of thing that we're up against. And it's insane. Never mind the top level, the headline stuff, like the unbelievable waits for any sort of gender affirming treatment. I think at the moment, as we speak, we're talking 36 to 48 months, I think, at the
for people that have been referred sort of that long ago. You know, if you think people that have been referred recently, then they're going to be looking at a much longer wait to receive any sort of treatment.
This is it. And that's before you can even sit down. I mean, a wait of nearly 4 years before you can even sit down with somebody and say, I think I might be transgender. That's not just about having the right, because we have got the right, we can go and do it, but there's no equity there. If someone turns up at the doctor's to say, listen, my knee's been playing up, I think I'm going to need a knee, they can do that as elective surgery through the NHS, and they have to stick within the NHS England guidelines. When it comes to us, not so much.
No, I mean, they've literally said that they don't have to stick to the guidelines, which...
And then, don't even get me started on the toilet thing.
Okay, well, we won't go there.
Hannah, am I allowed to get started on the toilet debate, or do I need to calm down a bit?
I don't think we have too much more time, unfortunately.
I'll be quiet. I'm sorry.
Don't be an angry country.
I've been using the correct gender toilet according to my passport for the last 3 years, and nobody has noticed. Because it turns out, in the loo, I go in, I use the loo, I wash my hands, which a surprising amount of people don't, and then I leave. And that's all that happened.
Did you know that MyUmbrella LGBT Plus run online social events, and when allowed, we will run COVID-secure local social events and also attend a number of Pride events across the UK. They have officiated training events with a number of blue chip and global corporations to present to them what they need to know about LGBT plus and how to be more inclusive. Did you know that MyUmbrella also have an online Etsy store where you can purchase LGBT plus merchandise and their guide to LGBT plus? Just pop onto the MyUmbrella website and click shop. Thank you ever so much, Jason and Sammy, for joining us today on the episode 1 of Under the Brolly. See you all next month for episode 2, where we will take a look at the lesbian flags and talk about Lesbian Visibility Week and Lesbian Visibility Day.
Fantastic. That was good.
And on that note,
thank you for having us. We
goodbye.
Come along.
Thank you.
No, thanks. Cool.
I'll see you soon.
I'm sure you will.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you ever so much for Sammy and Jason joining us on today's show. However, there is a lot more in store. Next up, we have got a very special guest. We have now got Steph on the line, who has their own perspective on Transgender Day of Visibility. Hi, Steph.
Hello.
What are your opinions on Transgender Day of Visibility and trans visibility on a whole?
I think it's really important that there's a special day to shout about it. I mean, I think it's one of those things that there isn't enough visibility in general day-to-day life. I think, you know, people shout really loudly and there's an awful lot of support in the corner for trans rights, but actually getting it into the mainstream, getting it across to people that perhaps don't have that day-to-day interaction with the trans community, that don't go out and look for that information. It's a really good opportunity to push the visibility out there a little bit more.
So just so the viewers at home understand who you are and what you're all about, we approached you in relation to a project that you had going on. Would you like to explain a little bit about your project and what that means for the trans community?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the chair of Progress Theatre in Reading. And during the COVID crisis, obviously theatre hasn't really been happening on our stages normally. So we've been putting together a digital programme of plays instead. and I am directing a play called Rotterdam, which is written by Jon Brittain. And it's a play that focuses quite heavily on trans relationship. The two main characters of the play, Alice and her partner, Fiona, they're a young British couple living in Rotterdam. Alice has been struggling to come out as gay. She's been sort of umming and ahhing about whether to tell her family or not. And just as she's about to come out and come clean and tell her parents who she really is, her partner comes out as trans. And that happens quite early on in the play. So the main focus of the play really is how her partner, Adrian, kind of continues his journey, how he starts to transition and what that does to their relationship. And I thought it's a really interesting angle to take, because the trans story in itself is a really important one to tell, but also looking at how that affects the people close to you and your relationships, and what that does to who they think they are as well. And it's a really beautifully written play. It focuses, the characters are really well written, and I loved it. And it's a fairly small cast play, and I think it will work really well in a digital format. So,
as a cisgendered woman, what drew your passion to be involved with this project? Like, why did you pick this story in particular to tell?
A lot of it was down to the quality of the writing of the play. But I've got friends that are transitioning that I'm very close to, that it sort of, I think the story rang true for me from I'm an outsider's point of view almost. The chap that has written the play is a cis man. He doesn't have any direct experience of transgender, but it's written, I think, in a really sensitive way that I think the audience watching it will identify with the story, whether they're identifying with it from a position of being trans themselves, whether they're in a position where they have been close to someone going through that process, or whether they have absolutely no experience at all of anyone transgender. I think it's written that in a way that means that it will mean something to them, and they'll come away knowing more and understanding more about how that process feels and how it feels to be transgender.
So from a director's point of view, of course, there's that whole controversy at the moment in the media in relation to casting trans people as trans characters. Where do you stand on that? Because, as you said, one of the main characters is trans, and what is your perspective from that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? I think it's really important that you represent as well as you can who those characters are. And I think it's important that when this play first was toured, the actor playing that character was not a trans actor. And there was a really big outcry, and quite a lot of people were quite upset by the fact that part hadn't been given to a trans actor. And I think that's a really valid point, because I think, again, from an outsider's point of view, as the director, my goal with any play that I direct is to make the characters as true and as real and as well-rounded as I can, whatever their story and whatever they're trying to portray to the audience. And so for me, it's really important that I work with somebody from the trans community to make sure that I'm portraying that truthfully. And it's not going to be everybody's story. Of course it isn't. It's one character that's written for a play.
Yeah.
But it's really important to me that I get that feedback, and that conversation can happen in the rehearsal room, because then we'll provide a much better insight on stage.
So you're currently in the process of casting, and you mentioned that you have auditions coming up. Would you like to expand a little bit on that?
So the auditions are on the 10th and the 13th of March. They're going to be held online on Zoom, which is where the play will be performed eventually. So you don't need to leave your house. You can audition in your slippers. You can find all the details on the Progress Theatre website. You don't have to be a member of Progress to audition. You do need to live within about 10 miles of the theatre. Obviously, with Zoom now, we don't have the geographical limits that we would normally, so we just put a cap on it to try and keep it local, because Progress is a local community theatre. You'll see on the audition page there is an email address there which comes straight to me. So if you've got any questions at all, get in touch with me, and I can have a chat with anybody that's interested. But I'm super keen to chat to and speak to as many people as I can about it.
So when it comes to the auditions, are you planning to cast a trans character in that role?
Yeah, that's definitely the intention, if I can, from the auditionees. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's just the most truthful way of portraying that character.
So when is the performance date? When should our viewers get hyped and mark it in their calendars?
So the performance dates are the 23rd, 24th and 25th of June later this year.
Okay.
So pop it in your calendars. Keep an eye on the internet.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you here today, and we cannot wait to hear from you again once you've got the cast all selected, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to them here on Under the Brolly soon. We're that excited for it to happen. Thank you ever so much for talking to us, Steph, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. It's been lovely to talk to you.